Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? How are ya? On the show this week, I sit down with my good friend, Patrick Ryan. Patrick is a guitar tech based out of Little Elm, Texas. That's right near Dallas. He's worked for Shakira, Smashing Pumpkins, Little River Band, Dead Daisies. He's currently the guitar tech for Blue October, although he's on the sideline right now. He'll tell you all about that. He'll also talk about how he got into the business, what we think of the business. Notice I said we, and how he and I met, which is a pretty cool story. Yeah, it was a really cool story. Patrick came into my life at a time when I needed a really good friend, and he has been all of that to this day. It was a great conversation. Let's check it out. All right, man. Tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Pat Ryan. I'm a guitar technician. Most recently, I worked for the band Blue October, Smashing Pumpkins, Shakira, Hugh Jackman, Dead Daisies, and a variety of other bands.
Did the hips lie when you were on Shakira?
Everybody asks that. He's actually getting ready to go out again, I think, pretty soon.
I heard.
Yeah, I saw a friend of mine just got the playback engineer spot for something coming up here pretty quickly.
Right on, man.
So, yeah,
and you're currently based in Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm born and raised outside of St. Louis in Lake St. Louis, Missouri. My wife and I and our three sons, we moved to Dallas back in 2015. Mm-hmm. With what I do, I can pretty much live anywhere, so she had a job opportunity and it was time for a change of scenery. And that's kind of what brought us to the Dallas area.
Yeah. That's what I always say, as long as there's an airport.
Right. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
As long as there. But did you, growing up in St. Louis, man, you come from a musical family, or were you the black sheep, or,
Ironically enough, my grandfather played jazz, like ragtime piano, like back in like the Prohibition area. I found out, he was a great piano player. He used to play like at family gatherings on holidays and stuff. He would tear it up on the piano, and I never knew he played in a band or anything like that so much later on in life. But he was amazing. My dad played piano as well, and so did my sister. But as far as playing in bands and stuff like that, that was pretty much just me, and our family. That was about it.
Yeah. So when did you start playing? Yeah, let me go back to that, like ragtime piano. Do you like ragtime? I love ragtime piano.
Well, in St. Louis too, like there's a connection with Scott Joplin and all that. He could play all that stuff. I always knew he played piano, but I didn't know his association with playing live and bands and stuff. And there was a story I've told people, I guess, going back. He came to stay with us. He had a heart attack, and so he came to relax and go live with us. We kind of live out in it was Lake St. Louis is more of a rural area, and we lived on a lake. So they sent Grandpa out to live with us, where he could kind of relax and not get so worked up after this heart attack. And one night after a gig, the van pulls up out front of the house, and I come falling out of the van, and there's beer cans and everybody's yelling, and this whole scene is happening. And I walk up to the front porch, and there's my grandpa sitting on the front porch, and he's like, you played tonight? I go, yeah, and I'm all trying to keep it together and not act drunk, And the next day he opens up about how he used to play in a band around St. Louis called Louis' Hungry Five, and he was the piano player and kind of like the musical director. And around the Prohibition era, they used to play speakeasies and wine parties and all this stuff out in the middle of nowhere for the mafia.
Wow.
And I was telling my father this story, and he had no idea, and neither did his brothers. Like, it was part of his history that he kind of buried once he got married and started a new life as a family man. And so that was kind of something cool that he, told me about, that no one in the family knew about. So it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, Scott Joplin had that Missouri connection, but he was born in Texarkana, Texas. So
I'd heard that. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's cool, man. That's cool. I was talking to someone earlier um on the show, and they talked about their grandfather, that he played double bass, the
Oh,
stand-up
neat.
bass, not the
Right.
but he would hear him. They would hear him like just go down there and play. It was a
Yeah.
part of his past life, but they
Yeah.
he never really talked about it.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say though, growing up outside St. Louis, this is going back to the 80s, before the internet and everything. All we had were cassette players, and MTV had just come out. Um, I always tell people I'm as excited about guitar and guitar playing and music at 52, which is how old I am now, as I was when I was 12. But I grew up on players. Having older brothers, I was exposed to Carlos Santana and Eric Clapton, and Eddie Van Halen was a game changer. I still remember sitting in the beanbag chair and hearing the opening to Running with the Devil and the car horns, how they fade in.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. That got me into it. Probably, I would say, I remember hearing Van Halen when they first came out in the late 70s through my brother, but I want to say probably 81, 82 is when I kind of got the bug that I wanted to play guitar, and I started playing around then. I guess I want to say it was like 82, 83, right around that time.
Yeah.
George Lynch was another monster influence on me. Warren DeMartini, Jakey Lee. I don't know. There were so many great players from that era. Of course, it got kind of diluted as well. It bugs me now that they call it the hair metal era, because there was so much more to it than that. But even Joe Perry, Aerosmith, U2. I mean, even weird stuff like Johnny Marr. I really thought he was a great player too. That was more out in left field, but I always had an appreciation for the guitar, not just with one style of music. I mean, predominantly hard rock and metal and stuff back then. But it was, but I just always appreciated the guitar. I think you're the same way.
Yeah, and I think that if you listen to a lot of the young cats, these like Polyphia and cats like that, man, they look at those guys from the 80s, and that's their influence. Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, Jakey.
Yeah.
Jakey Lee will always be one of my guys, man.
Oh, for sure.
He was such a monster player. He's still a monster player,
Well, Ozzy's had so many amazing guitar players, but the one thing, like, as a kid, I saw that show. I think it was Ultimate Sin Tour in '86, and it was that lineup of Randy Castillo, Jakey Lee, Ozzy.
Bill Susan was playing bass.
Yeah, and it was Metallica on Master of Puppets.
I remember that. I saw it at the Tarrant County Convention Center in Fort Worth.
Oh, really?
And
wow.
On a side note, I hate to bogart your story here. My friends, we had bought tickets, and we were literally in the highest balcony of Tarrant County Convention, in the last row. But you would have thought we were right up front, because it was my first concert ever.
Oh, really?
And I remember, like, I was so excited when we were leaving. I was walking down those steep steps, and I slipped and fell, and just, when you slide on your butt down steps. Oh man,
right.
So embarrassing. What a way to end the night. But that's what happened.
Yeah. But you'd agree though that, man, there was such a skill to guitar playing. Whereas like, it wasn't that I didn't like the grunge era, but it was so weird coming from that era and then going into this thing where, like, yeah, there were great songs, but I mean, as far as the technique and stuff seemed to go out, So it's amazing, these bands that you just brought up, seeing that kind of come back again, the skill to lead guitar playing and things like that.
Yeah. I love watching those these young kids. I say kids, they're probably in their 20s, but I love watching their videos and seeing them actually just, you know, just
Yeah,
play the guitar. Like you said, you and I, we're the same age, man. We came up at the same time. You probably had the same. I'm going to be honest. I loved Eddie Van Halen. I loved him, but I didn't get
yeah,
into Van Halen till the Hagar years. Is that crazy or
yeah.
what?
I mean, so many people my age hate like it seems like hate's a strong word, but don't like the Hagar era. Whereas like
Yeah.
I love them both. It's like two
I
separate
know. Well,
bands.
that's what led me. I mean, I'd heard of Eddie Van Halen. I'd heard of the band Van Halen, and I heard "Running with the Devil" and "Ice Cream Man," and I heard all those songs.
Yeah,
But my coming of age was 5150, and then that took
yeah.
me back to Diver Down and Women and Children First, and then my
Oh yeah,
appreciation. But I think with 5150, Eddie really got to show his songwriting skills.
oh for sure.
He was not a party guitar player anymore. He got to show that he could write a song. He was a multi instrumentalist, and I mean, I
Yeah,
love, and I even like the Gary Sharon album. It was a great
yeah.
album, But
Well, the cool thing about that guy was he was always evolving.
yeah,
That it wasn't like he did one thing and then just repeated it every album.
yeah,
It's there was so much to his playing, and I think so many people get lost in the tapping aspect of it and the flash part of it, but people discount like what a monster blues player he was.
yeah,
He had chops. He was an amazing blues player, and when he talks about how he drew from Clapton and Jeff Beck, you can really hear it if you listen to his stuff. I mean, yeah, he made it his own,
yeah,
but
and the tone,
amazing blues chops.
his tone. He was a tone. He coined that phrase, the Brown sound.
Yeah,
Um, It's
yeah,
funny. You said something earlier, like you still look at guitars at 52 that you did when you were younger. And I think it was Eddie that I read an interview several years ago when I was young. And he said, the passion for guitar, really anything, if you look at what you're doing the same way you looked at it when you were 12, 13 years old, you'll never lose that passion. If you look at it like you can't go into it going like, oh, this is where I am. Like you have to pick up your guitar and be
yeah.
learning Crazy Train for the first time or learning, for the first time anytime you pick it up. And it makes a lot of sense. When you said that earlier, that's immediately what I thought of before we got
I
on.
never knew he said that, but that's incredible. I mean, it's and I think anybody who's really serious about the instrument can relate to that. Like
Yeah.
that's my happy place.
Yeah.
If I'm sad, if I'm happy, if I'm stressed, whatever, I'm most at home when I have a guitar in my hands. It's
Yeah.
therapeutic. It's a creative outlet. It's a way to express yourself, and that's a gift. I mean, to have
Yeah.
anything in your life, I'm incredibly grateful for that.
I always say it's the one constant in my life. Like
Yeah,
friends come and go, jobs come and go, girls come and go, but the one constant in my life is there's always been a guitar in the room.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And it's funny. My youngest son was asking me the other day. Because I always played guitar, and I tell people that like I never aspired to be a guitar technician exactly, but I was always in love with the science of it. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying, my son asked me, he's like, did you ever play? And I just started laughing. I'm like, yeah, that's what I always did. That's what kind of brought me to the tech aspect of it. Um, I was having a conversation yesterday with a buddy of mine, Trace Davis, and we were just saying how, there's some technicians out there who aren't necessarily guitar players, but they're from a mechanical end of it. They understand the instrument, and that's not the norm, I don't think. But I've always thought that you need to be a player to understand um, what the guy you're working for is dealing with and what he expects out of his instrument and how to get from point A to point B. I always use the analogy like you have to be in my mind, you almost have to know how to drive a car before you can be in the pit crew,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
understand if something's correct or not before you send it out.
Yeah. Makes
You know,
sense.
I
Uh,
guess,
no, no, no,
but
it does. It works for some cats that don't play and their mind just works. They know how it feels.
yeah, and they're just so mechanically
Yeah. But
gifted to be able to do that. I mean, I know there's some guys that are amazing at the job and aren't guitar players per se, but they know enough to get by, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on that topic, man, how did you get into this business? How did you start playing guitar? I mean, you played guitar. How did you start,
Well, I,
teching?
well, I think what had happened was I started playing into the early, I guess, mid '80s as a kid, and then after high school, um, when I was in college, I had gotten the band I was playing in at the time. We had gotten a contract through the USO, the Department of Defense, to entertain troops overseas. We were playing downtown in St. Louis, and there was some guy. There was a big blizzard that was going on in town or in the area, and we were basically snowed in. And while we were there playing, there was some guy who was like, "You guys need to go to Japan. You need to go to Japan." And he was kind of buzzed, but he was buying all of our drinks, and we were having a good time with him. And we thought he was full of shit, and it turns out he was the director of global entertainment for USO.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next thing I know, like within a couple months, we were going over to Korea and Okinawa and Japan. And I had to know, on a Sunday night in the middle of Korea somewhere, if my guitar wasn't working, I needed to know how to at least have a show that night and be able to make things work. And that was sort of the catalyst that got me, got my brain thinking from, like just strictly as a player and bringing my guitar to a shop to get worked on into how can I make this guitar function, but also how can I hot rod it? How can I make it more personal to my own needs as a player? And then as a technician, after I got out of playing in bands, a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to go out with this band for the summer. I was like, well, I'm a guitar player. I'm not a technician. And he's like, you work on my stuff. You work on your own stuff. Just apply that same thing to this guy, And that was Little River Band. I want to say it was in 98, 99. And I thought I was going to do it just for like the remainder of the summer, like 3 or 4 weeks. And that was 25 years ago. So,
Yeah.
you know,
What a great
so
band.
yeah. It was a great education getting to work with those guys. I would say it was like being out with my uncles all summer,
Yeah.
on a road trip, but some of the nicest folks I've ever met,
That they
and
let you
I'm
drink
still
their
in
beer.
touch. I'm still in touch with them now,
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool, man. Yeah, I love that band. So, I mean,
You've seen that movie, The Other Guys, haven't you?
yeah.
Where they bring up Little River Band. And, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I liked them before that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I love when a band like that gets their due on something that a lot of folks are going to see,
Yeah. Yeah. They got a good shout out on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went out with Little River Band. How long did you work with them, you say?
Off and on. I was with them from 98 to about 2009.
Mm-hmm.
Most of that time. And then other offers started coming in, and then I went to work with Blue October for a while, and then it was Dead Daisies, which they're kind of an all-star band,
Yeah.
but that was great. I got to work with Richard Fortis, and growing up in St. Louis, Richard was how do I put it? He was like everybody knew he was going to do something, back then when he was a kid, and
Yeah.
then he got the Guns N' Roses gig, and he did a bunch of other stuff too. Psychedelic Furs, tons of studio work. But getting to work with him was great. John Corabi, which I think we've talked about John before. Great guy,
Yeah.
great player. Marco Mendoza on bass. That was a real fun gig. And then it just kind of went from there into other bands.
Yeah, you know what? To me, and my opinion means nothing. That was the coolest version of the Dead Daisies with
Yeah.
John. I mean, I think John's back in the band now, but
Yeah.
with Marco's such a great singer.
Yeah.
On top of his bass playing,
Yeah.
So,
I remember seeing that what was it, that video from Hammersmith Odeon they put out in like 2007, the White Snake He was a live Whitesnake video with Doug Aldrich on guitar and Marco Mendoza, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
That's where I first knew of Marco, but he was a fun guy to work with, and I just admired his history because he played with so many of my guitar idols. Neil Sean was another he's somewhere in my top 5. So Steve Lukather, guys like that he played with, as well as Doug Aldrich, George Lynch, all those guys. But monster bass player. You can't say enough about the guy.
I have a funny story. I don't know if I should tell it, but I think I will.
Sure.
I met Marco when he played in Thin Lizzy, and it was the lineup of Scott Gorham, John Sykes, Marco, and Tommy Aldridge.
Oh, wow. John Sykes was in it then.
Yeah, John Sykes was singing, and it was very creepy how much he sounded like Phil singing, you know, John. But I've met them there in Dallas, and the one thing I remember about Marco, he was so happy that day because he had finally convinced the tour manager to put Slim Fast on the rider.
I can believe that. That guy was like he was, if he didn't make it music, he should have been a comedian, because that guy was just always on.
He was just like, he's like, oh man, I'm so happy they finally put this on the rider. I've been trying to get it on the rider. And they said, what? And he's like, Slim Fast. And I always thought that was hilarious.
That is funny.
Another thing too is someone had taken his vest to a cleaner's. He wanted to get it clean, and rather than take it to a cleaner, they took it to a laundromat and washed it.
Shrunk it or something?
Yeah. Everything wrong happened in Dallas, but he got his Slim Fast. So that's my Marco Mendoza story.
No, speaking of funny stories in Dallas, the first show I ever did with them was at the I'm not even from here, and I call it the Starplex, but the big outdoor shed down in Dallas. And we were headlining the front stage. So if you can picture this, it's like probably 110 degrees outside, hot as hell, and we're playing this pop-up stage with an inflatable roof. It was the Ernie Ball stage. And the generator died in the middle of the third song. And so in front of thousands of people, this is my first gig with them, the entire rooftop just comes down on top of him and is ripping down cymbal stands and knocking amps over. And, what do you go to first, but it was like this big cloak of failure, floating down. And then they fired it up again really quick, the generator, and it blew the fuses out in the amps.
Oh man.
So it was a trial by fire, but it's a funny story. Is, when shit happens in the middle of a gig, all you can do is try to keep your composure about it. But that was, I have pictures of that somewhere. That was a crazy moment. We were able to get up and running again, but it was nutty.
Yeah, I love first gig stories because we just talked to a guy named Brandon Burney, and he said on his first gig he got food poisoning and he broke every bus rule you could possibly break that night.
Oh no!
Yeah, because of the food poisoning. You know what I'm talking about. I don't need to say
you don't want a brown bag your first day on the bus.
Yeah. I used to work for a guy named Jack Ingram, and my very first gig with him, I didn't know him. I had never met him. I had never even heard his songs. But so he walks on stage and I hand him his guitar as he's walking on stage, and he just kind of gives me this look. Later on, Jack and I became really good friends. But he gives me this guitar and he starts playing this song, and he's looking around and he's looking back. Now, mind you, he didn't come to sound check. Nobody told me anything. They just said, here's the guitar, here's the pedal board. So I just ran it like I normally would. I wasn't familiar.
Yeah.
They didn't even give me a past set list to see notes. He turns around and he walks back and he's like, where's my effing capo? And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, where is it? And I'm like, and he goes, I find one, I give it to him, and then he's like kicking the pedal board, and I go down there and he's like, what's going on? And I look up and I go, I just fucking met you, man. Oh yeah. I literally just met you but anyway, that was my first gig story with Jack Ingram.
Yeah.
He thought that was hilarious, that was my response. This shit's going wrong with his gear. It's like, dude, I just met you.
No, I mean, there's another band I worked with that, without saying who they are, it kind of rhymes with Dashing Shrumpkins. And I was, there's certain players you work with who are very diligent in making sure you know their thing and understand everything you need to know about the gig. And there's other ones who just naturally assume you should know their little nuances and stuff. And I walked into a situation like that where, what was it? It was something with, I was doing this guy's, all of his switching from side stage, and it was over parts of songs that we had never discussed. And that was always, like, we never had this discussion, you know. I can do a lot of things, but I'm not a mind reader,
Yeah.
And that's where this job can be frustrating, but a majority of them are great. And that was a great experience too, working with this band I'm talking about. But it was it gives you an appreciation for a lot of the other bands you work with as well,
Yeah.
And you're a better tech for it at the end of the day,
Yeah, you're better.
I mean, with every experience, you learn something with every experience,
Yeah. But I think when a player starts to lose their grip on I for lack of a better term, reality, I think, and you're there to assist them. Us as techs are there to assist them. And when they forget when they were the only person they had to get their gear going, they forget the things that went wrong, and they've I'm not saying all of them, but when a player forgets that and just assumes you're a magician and you're a mind reader, and they take it out on you personally, I've had one person do that. It's the only gig I ever walked on. I won't say the name either, but I mean, it rhymes with paleo.
Yeah.
And it just it was not a cool gig for me. And I mean, maybe they're great. I mean, maybe that person is a great person, but that night was not good for me. And I thought, you know what? I won't be able to look at myself in the mirror if I do these next few shows. So I'm just gonna pay my way home tonight,
Yeah, and I was warned about that one. And like I said, I don't regret doing the gig. It was a great gig, but nobody wants the player to have a better night than us guys in the trench,
Exactly, man.
So it's yeah.
Whenever someone asks, like, how was your show? I'm like, I didn't hear from my guy. So that's, as long as I don't hear from him, that's a good thing,
Yeah, I always said that, when a guy just walks up and he's in a good mood and fist bumps me and just walks out in front of 20,000 people, that says so much more than any compliment.
Yeah.
When you have their confidence like that, that's what really matters,
Yeah.
I
was going to ask you what's the most challenging part of your job, but that's really it. It's that relationship between you and the player, because a lot of cats, they'll say like, oh, you're the guy that goes out there and hands them guitars. And that's my whole job from an audience's point of view.
See, you tune guitars, right? And it's like 1% of what the big picture is, but it's really a weird skill set, isn't it? Like if you look at the other people we tour with, guys like you and I, you have audio people, you have lighting people, like there's actual proper schools for that. And I mean, so many of those people are hands-on like we are and learned as you go, but there's really not a backline tech school. It's a culmination of all your past experiences from being a player when you're younger or when you're not on the road, and just bringing that knowledge to whoever you're working with. Your ability to keep your head when things go wrong, and your problem solving skills. I mean, it's a what would you call it? Like a mix up of all those different factors,
which I didn't think I had any of those, Pat. When I started, I didn't think I had problem solving skills. I didn't think I could keep calm. Until I started doing this, when I started teching, it was it probably improved me as a person because I learned to think on my toes. I'm still to this day, you know, I'm almost 20 years into it, and
Yeah.
the show starts, my heart rate goes up. I think I'm going to get fired. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like this is it. This is the last night. Like I know that the last thing I tell my drum tech in the talkback mic every night is like, I
Yeah.
hope I don't fuck up. You know,
Right. No, I mean,
but
but I think that's what keeps you on your toes. I think I wouldn't use the word caring, but the minute you're not when you don't have butterflies and you're not nervous before the start of a show,
mm,
I mean, because I always say you're only as good as your last save with what we do,
yeah,
you know? And so much of it, yeah, is preventative maintenance, but you have to give a shit. And I always tell whoever it is I'm working with, like, I'll I'll go down in flames with you. You'll never be out there alone,
yeah.
trying to sort it out. And knock on wood, those instances are far and few between. And after a while, it's just great to see performances fall into you make it as familiar as possible for them.
Yeah.
Everything from the number of picks on the mic stand to exact positioning of things on the amp to
And that
whatever.
shit's important. People don't realize how important. I just had a guy, a very good friend of mine, fill in for me
Yeah,
on the Duran gig, and I was telling him like, this is where his water goes. This is where
yeah,
his and I was like, you keep the Diet Coke on this case. You know, when he walks down, he's gonna want that. And that shit's important because it's like uh
yeah,
muscle memory that's where he's gonna reach for it. And like,
yeah.
it is important.
Consistency is key. Yeah,
Man, I wish I
yeah,
was like some of these cats out there. Some of these cats that are just they're just amazing techs. Uh, they can do anything. They can. I mean, you're one of them. You can take apart a guitar and rebuild it. You can change out pickups
yeah.
between songs. You can do all that. And
You can do
I,
all that stuff too, though. We've
yeah,
worked on
yeah, but
stuff
man,
together.
I start telling myself, nah, you can't. You gotta wait till tomorrow. Let them get through the show.
Yeah,
Let them get through the
right,
show.
right.
But
Yeah,
there's in our industry, like there's A, B, and C. And I've toured with guys who start at A and they know how to get to C if something goes wrong, but they don't know
yeah,
the B. So when that B goes wrong, they're just like, oh, so an old tour manager buddy of mine, Tim Craven, told me like, you start at A, you got to know how to get to B to get to C. If
yeah,
you know that,
yeah,
there's nothing you can ever go wrong with. But
yeah,
I've toured with guys who know how to get to C, but they have no clue that B is there. And I've watched them go down in flames, and you just watch because you
yeah.
can't help them, they're, uh,
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's the worst.
yeah,
I've seen that with other techs I've been out with, and
yeah,
yeah, but you got to keep your skills sharp too. Like if there's something you're not good at, then work at it when you have time.
yeah.
That's what I've always tried to do. If time allowed it, I would work on my weaknesses. I mean, here's another part of our interview here, but like, how you and I met, we both focused, we got together, we met each other and focused on, um, learning from each other,
Yeah.
and
Let's
working
talk
on what
about
our
that a
weaknesses
little, man.
were.
Let's talk about how we met. It was
It's an
pretty.
incredible story. I love telling people this story, but yeah, go ahead
Yeah,
from your
I think
perspective.
the last time I physically saw you, I went to see Blue October, and we had
Yeah.
dinner with Bagel before the show. And before
Yeah.
you sat down, and I said, you know what? Before we start eating, before we say anything stupid, I just wanted to let you know that this dude saved my life. And
Uh,
I firmly believe that because I was in a place that I didn't know what to do. Um, Nobody really understood what guys like us were going through. Everybody had lost everything. I'm not saying I was not downplaying what everyone else was going through, but uh people in our industry, man, like we're the first to go and the last to come back, and we're still coming back. Um
yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't talk to anybody about what I was feeling. All those years of just pushing everything down because you're on the road. Like I always tell people, those 2 hours that the show's happening, man, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Then you
Yeah.
get on the bus and you're around people who helped you make it happen. So you're really only
Yeah.
alone when you're sleeping. You wake up, you do it all over
Yeah.
again. So you never have that time to dwell on what's wrong with you until something like that
Yeah.
happens. And all I did was dwell
Yeah.
with what's wrong with me. And you and I had a mutual
Yeah.
friend. I reached out to you and I just cold called you, man. Like I was trying to sell you fucking Amway or something. I just cold called you. I mean
Yeah.
that's how it was, right? Like I think my message started as like, "Hey, man, you don't know me, but we both know this cat."
Well,
And,
I'd heard of you through the industry. I didn't know you lived that close to me, though. I knew you were in the Dallas area. So,
yeah,
yeah, but it's like you're saying, you reached out and you're like, "Hey, I do what you do," and um, I can't remember we were talking about what we were going through, and it was similar stuff. Like nobody could. How do I put this? It was hard to find anybody who could identify and understand what we were going through with what our line of work is, except
yeah,
for another person who does it, you know. But I was so glad you reached out and look at the friendship we have now because of it. But getting back to that story about Bagel, the funny thing was when we were walking to dinner to go meet you at the restaurant, I said, man, you have no idea. Like I don't get depression uh, normally. I mean, yeah, everybody has their ups and downs, but I was truly clinically depressed when all that was going on. And I go, Bernie saved my life just to have somebody I could talk to that could relate to what I'm going through.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
in
man.
our line of work was so invaluable. Just somebody to have as a sounding board. And I think you and I were like, let's just meet up and grab lunch. And then we got to talking, and we found out we had so many mutual friendships,
Yeah.
and then we're just like, I remember we just learned from each other. Like,
Yeah, we just started tinkering around on guitars and that's how it started. But then I think what I noticed most is we would just talk.
yeah,
We were just talking and you know,
yeah,
picking each other's brain, almost like feeling each other out. Like
yeah,
and
yeah, man.
I do, man. I do value your friendship a lot. You know, we became really good friends from nothing.
Well,
You know,
that's my
I
favorite story out of COVID for sure. You
yeah,
know,
I think I always say, man, I'm too old to make good friends now.
yeah. But I mean, I don't know what you call it, ego, whatever. But a lot of times, not just people who do what we do, but in any line of work, people are guarded with their knowledge.
Yeah.
I've always heard an expression. It's like, once you learn something, it's your job to throw the rope back down the hill.
Yeah.
And uh, a lot of times people don't do that.
Yeah.
Out of insecurity or worrying about somebody poaching their gig or whatever. And I remember our conversations were so awesome because it was like, well, what do you not know about that I know about that we can help each other with? And it was
Yeah.
it was so great to bounce that off, somebody else. It was really cool.
Yeah,
You
and then
know.
after that, I mean,
Then we got Cowboy in on it too
we
for a
brought in
couple.
Cowboy and he was, he's pretty guarded himself, but he was just I text him, I was like, "Hey man, I meet with this guy once a week and you should come and just hang out." And he was like, "Just say when. Just say when,
Yeah,
like I need to get out. I need to talk to somebody." And it was fun,
yeah,
man. I mean, like I said, those conversations are some of my favorites. So those hangs, some of
yeah.
my
It was
favorite
so
times.
healthy for all the right reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was really good. But yeah, man, I'm grateful for you. That was an amazing thing.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
On that subject, man, well, kind of on that subject, one thing you started showing me was the axe effects. How do you stay up to date with new technology and gear? To go back what we were talking about, like keep your skills sharp, and so forth.
Well, I mean, I think that's a big part of it is to be relevant in this world. You have to be up on. You got to go with technology, or else you become a dinosaur. Like, of course, I love tube amps, um, and that's one whole school. And then you have the new school where people are using fractals and they're using the Kemper profiler. Um, and there's so much new stuff that's always coming out, not just from those two companies, but tons of other companies. It's frustrating to me when I run into a guy who's just like, all that shit, it sucks, it's fake, and you have to embrace both, or else you're gonna become extinct and just be
Yeah.
some crabby guy in his bedroom without a gig. But of course I love amps and analog technology and tube technology, but you really have to be well versed in everything. If you get a call to go do a gig and the guy's got a Kemper or a Fractal, you at least better know how to navigate around on it and work on it, be able to jump in there if you're not familiar with it. So it's just one of those necessary evils, I think, to stay up on things. I always tried to, and it was a good excuse to buy new toys when something new would come out.
I need to know how to use it,
right? Just so I could tinker it and then use it, sell my wife on the idea that it was for research purposes. I don't know. I guess so. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, man. That's I still my confidence is never there. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I've always had a confidence. I mean, I seem to think right now I'm on a pretty big gig. You know?
Kind of
big. I think these guys might have something going for them.
Right. But they got a bright future.
It's the confidence thing. Like, I'm not good enough to be here. I'm not doing, whatever. Why am I here? Why? It's, I guess, imposter syndrome. So when new gear comes out, I'm the same way. DSP, the neural DSP.
Yep.
There was a time when we were thinking about switching, and I reached out to him and I said, could I check one out and just see what it, and I don't know if it was you or who I reached out to, and they said, did you get it? And I said, yeah, I've been staring at it for a month.
Yeah.
It was it was sitting next to my desk in the office, and I just kind of turned it on and I stared at it for almost a month. Like, I was terrified. And then once I got into it, I go, oh, okay. So they're all kind of the same. The Axe effects, the neural, the line 6, they all kind of take from each other, but it just takes that little bit of like me waking up with the right mindset and going, I'm going to try it, rather than me waking up with the mindset of like, I always, did you ever watch Penelope Pit Stop, the Anthill Mob? Did you see that? So there was always that one gangster that's like, we'll never make it. That's me. that's me in real life. Like, oh, we're doomed. We'll never make it. That's how I think of things. I use that reference with my friend Johnny, and he had never heard of it. And I'm like, I feel so old.
Yeah, that neural thing, that thing's incredible, isn't it?
It is. It's great, man. It's not exactly what we need out here, but it's really cool. It's a really cool piece of gear. Not out here on the other gig, but it's a really cool piece of gear. Yeah,
I was working with Sus Vasquez, she guitar player with Carol G, and I was checking it out. It's almost like this. It's crazy. It's like this iPad that you plug into,
Yeah.
And she was just like, "Oh, check it out," and dialing up all this stuff like instantly.
Yeah.
And it sounded amazing. Some of the stuff that's on there is great. I mean, all three of those, the Fractal, the Kemper, the Neural. I think it's the tip of the iceberg for what we're going to be seeing.
Yeah. She's such a great guitar player. What was it like working with her?
Oh, she was just so sweet, but so talented. She stepped in and covered the lead guitar role in Blue October for a short while. And so I did a North American tour with her, and then again in Europe, and just a monster guitar player. And she hadn't played that long, which made me hate her even more.
I know, right?
But she, talk about the new breed of guitar player. Any tone that was required where she could just instantly source it from her gear. And I was just so impressed with that. She had all the parts down, completely. And then, she could do all that. She was just a great utility player, but the whole package, and she was so sweet and such a nice person.
As opposed to cats like us, when they would ask us like, hey, you need to dial this in. We're like, it's out of tune. Always blame the tuning. The guitar's out of tune.
Right. Something doesn't sound right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never you,
Yeah.
it's the gear.
Yeah. Did you
You know?
did you plug into the input I told you to plug into in the wall?
Right.
It's
Right.
got to be the
Exactly.
power in this place.
I hear a hum.
Yeah.
Right. You know,
Yeah. It's
but
not going to happen. Sorry. You're getting distortion.
yeah.
Hey
Yeah.
man, what's the craziest like I follow a mutual friend of ours, Drew Froppy,
Yeah. Drew. I know Drew.
and I
Yeah.
see all the crazy stuff that he's had to do on the road. And like sometimes I'm watching it and I have to turn it off because I start getting really bad anxiety. Just like, what do you mean you had to do that overnight in
Yeah.
a hotel? Get ready. What's the craziest repair you've ever had to do on the road?
Oh, I've refretted a guitar overnight before, just always that's a little bit tricky. It can
Yeah.
be. Um but things happen, pickups will stop working sometimes. I mean, it's rare, but uh things happen. A guy I worked with in Little River Band told me early on, he's like, don't stress, everything's gonna break at some point.
Yeah.
And I
It's
was like,
rock
what
and
a great
roll.
thing to say. It's like it's
Yeah.
shit happens. So just be prepared for it as much as you can. But everything will eventually break. So, it's not on you. Just do your best to
Yeah.
have a plan B on it. Uh
Even us,
yes,
Pat, even we break.
that's true. Yes. Yeah. Um but yeah, I mean, different things will happen, and you gotta think on your feet and be able to have something the next day, that's adequate.
Yeah.
But I love those kind of challenges too. It keeps you thinking, keeps you on your feet, and ultimately makes you a better technician. When you overcome that stuff and go,
Yeah.
hey, look what I was able to do. You know, so
I've learned so much by just watching people, watching what they do, watching what they don't do, watching
yeah,
you. Like I said, I follow Drew. I watch what he does on these videos, and I'm like, I never thought of that.
yeah, Drew's
Because even this
incredible.
far, I'm one of those people. Even this far into my career, man, I'm like still trying to learn. Dude,
Yeah,
I will watch somebody string a guitar and go, wow, I don't do it like that. I'm gonna, that looks more economic than the way I do it, or you know.
yeah,
I don't know if that's the
yeah.
right word, but
I no, it's you can learn something from everybody,
yeah,
from anybody, on with what we do. That was one of the things I really liked when I started doing some of the bigger tours. I was able to meet, Fran Stuber, Jim Service, Aiden Mullen, a lot of these guys who are the big brothers of the guys that do what we do, and
yeah,
just not only just to learn from them, but just to see what their demeanor is too. Wouldn't you say? And
yeah,
like, they're all
yeah,
cool, they're down to earth, and they're not big headed guys.
yeah,
They're humble in what they do, and most of them have a great sense of humor. I mean, other guys, even dudes who are our age, like Scott Appleton, an amazing tech, Drew Foppy. Um, there's tons of them out there, but you know what I'm saying. You know,
yeah. No, I get it, man. Like when I came out on this gig, I knew who the guitar tech was. Who didn't know? That was
yeah,
you. And
yeah,
I walked up to him and I go, "Hey, man, I just want to say hi. I want to introduce myself." And he's like, "Thanks for coming over." And now, I'll get a text from him going, "Hey, you want to have breakfast?" Like to me, that's a big deal. And I've learned
yeah,
so much from being around the cat. You
yeah,
know, um, and he's so humble and he's so generous with his skills and his time and his advice
yeah,
that you can't help but take. But then, like you say, you meet someone like Drew, and you can't help but just look at their work and go like, man, like
yeah,
thanks for sharing that work.
yeah. He's the valedictorian of our class, isn't he?
He is,
Some of
man.
these
He's a
guys.
goddamn madman.
Yeah,
Scares me.
right, right. Yeah, you
He's
know,
so,
um,
I watch and he'll post something like, oh, guitar neck was left on stage and we left without it. So I built the neck out of the bedpost of my hotel room. You know,
right. I smelted some tuners from some
yeah,
pennies I found.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's that kind of stuff. Like,
you know,
made a deal with the Russian mob for some Russian tubes because we had to
right,
behind
right.
and it's those kind of things. But he's the guy that does it. And I've been reaching out to him, trying to get him to talk to me, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Another guy who I really enjoyed working with, and I learned so much from him for the short amount of time we worked together, was Tom Weber. And being a big Van Halen fan, and that's just one artist that he worked with, but
yeah,
everything about that guy, he was funny, he was super smart, he was just the definitive guitar technician,
yeah.
great guy. And man, I learned so much from Tom. But yeah, we're blessed to be able to pick these guys' brains and learn from them, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I mean, some of them may not admit it that I may do something that they like and they
Yeah.
take it. And I'm always generous with what little that I know. I'm very self-deprecating, but anybody asks me for anything and I'm like, well, let me show you. This is what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. I mean,
What's one tool you can't do without in your work box?
man, one that I use quite a lot, I got it right here, the ESP span wrench. I don't know if you have one of these or not,
That's got
but
to be one of the greatest inventions in the
I
last
mean,
20 years.
this is, I use this all the time, for jacks and pots, anything, just to check, keep an eye on that kind of stuff. There's a company I'm really excited about their products. They're called Music Nomad. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they make guitar tech tools, specifically like
Yeah.
all-in-one tools and just kits and things like that. And it really, especially for like fly dates, I
Yeah.
really like using their stuff.
Yeah, they
It
make a
cleans up
lot of
my
good
work
stuff.
box.
I'm part of their roster. I'm happy to be part of their roster, you
Yeah,
know, that they've
yeah,
taken care of me and they like you said, they've got a lot of great tools. It used to be
just
you'd have to go
practical
break
stuff.
the bank and go to Stu
Right.
Mac.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And
Not
Stu Mac
not saying
makes great stuff
I was
too.
gonna say not that they don't make great stuff. It's just shit's expensive. That's Stu Mac. I hope you're listening.
Right.
Give the techs a deal.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. Yeah.
speaking speaking of I was gonna ask you what you got planned coming up, but you just had a major knee surgery.
Yeah. Like most guys, I don't go to the doctor when I should. And my knee hurt for shit, probably a year and a half. And I always just wrote it off because I was so busy on the road when I was at home. I just didn't take the time. I got a wife and three boys, and um, life doesn't stop. When you get home, you hit the ground running and with that world. And I finally went in and saw an orthopedic specialist. And I was expecting him to say, "Oh, you got a meniscus tear," or
Yeah.
you need a laparoscopic, blah, 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 whatever. And the guy looked at me like I was an idiot. He's like, "You've got no cartilage at all in your knee. It's just grinding bone on bone." And it felt like it. I was miserable for a long time. And I tried to avoid getting a knee replacement, which is what he said I ultimately needed. I did the injections where it was like a cartilage substitute they would inject into your knee. And they said sometimes that buys people a few months, or sometimes it buys you a couple years. But it really didn't do anything. So I got off the last tour on December 18th. And the morning of December 20th, I went in, I got a right knee replacement, full knee replacement. So
Yeah.
it's better than it was already. I mean, it already feels better than it did before the surgery.
You
And it's
kind of
been,
dipped into what I was gonna ask you about that. Cats like us, like um when we'll put off injuries until
yeah.
there's time to do it. What would it benefit you to do it a year ago when you started feeling the pain? Could you have avoided surgery?
Yeah. I mean, at what point in time can you say, okay, I'm just not going to work?
Yeah.
So I had to try to build it into where I knew I had a pretty lengthy break where I could take the time to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm about 7 weeks out from it, and it's crazy, man. They had me walking on it 4 hours after surgery, with a walker. But I guess with knee surgeries and stuff, you have to be really proactive and get it moving because you don't want it to seize up or lose range of motion and go into atrophy and all that stuff. So it was a pretty aggressive physical therapy with it. But I'm still working at it now.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm about about 80%, 90% there.
Um, when do you think you might get back on the road? Is there, are you rushing it, or are you just making sure you're good to go?
Well, I mean, there's so much you put off with your own health when you're out there, because with our line of work, there's really not, you don't have sick days,
Yeah.
and as a result of that, sometimes you really put your own physical well-being on the back burner, and not that you should, but it's just nature of the beast.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, I can't make it in today. Can Bill help me out? It's so specialist. It's so specialized. You can't put the production in a situation like that.
Yeah.
But I know right now, with the band that I've worked with most recently, which is Blue October, I suggested to them that they find a guy, so I could take the time to heal properly, and that's what they did. I'm going down in about 2 weeks. They start production rehearsals, and just to kind of help get the guy situated, get him on his feet, save everybody some time. I wanted to just kind of show him the ropes. I mean, there's nothing worse than walking in on a gig cold, where not only do you not know anybody,
Yeah.
but you don't know whose gear is whose, what their preferences are and stuff. So I just want to give the guy the Cliff's Notes and
Yeah.
get him going. And it allows me, I mean, I think I was telling you before we started this interview, I was out a lot last year, so I'm really happy to be home for a while, just in the near future, and just focus on being a dad and husband, and keeping that, in balance, for right now, and let myself properly heal.
Yeah. I hear you, man. That's
But
important.
eventually I'll get out there again. I'm looking to do it here once things are better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone that's just getting into this industry, like doing what we do?
Just watch people. I mean, try to learn, try to pick up as much as you can, uh, on a local level. Be of help to bands that are doing things locally, before you ever get a road gig.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of things in life. They say, "Oh, you fake it till you can make it," and you might be able to luck out and do that, but that's really not. This isn't really the job to throw
No.
yourself in the deep end of the pool. Although that's kind of what I did, but I don't advise it.
No, I agree. I would have liked to learn a little more before I was, thrown into, but it
Yeah,
turned out pretty well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It didn't it. I
Yeah.
mean, I was talking to my dad the other day, and he's like, "You've seen a lot of this world, more than most," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for that."
Yeah.
Like, who gets to do that? What other line of work? I mean,
I know
yeah,
it's sometimes I used to say that, like, I I couldn't, it's hard to have conversations with my friends who don't tour, because they would say, "Oh, what'd you do this weekend?" And I'd say, "Well, I had a one-off in London." And that sounds very douchey. Like, I flew to
yeah,
London, did a show, and flew back. It sounds, so I would just say, "Oh, I didn't do anything," But
right,
it is a privilege for us to do this, and it's amazing because there's so many people in this world that don't get to see the places we've seen and do the things we've done, and we get to do it on someone else's dime, man.
yeah, yeah,
Don't let them start thinking about that
right,
like
right,
that. But no, we get to do it, man, and I'm very like you. I don't take it for granted. I appreciate every opportunity that's given to me, and I respect it. I take it,
yeah.
and I try and give them 100%.
Well, and to not only the things we get to experience, but just the fact that it's something you love so much. I always tell friends, I'm a 52-year-old who gets to play with Lincoln Logs.
You know, right?
you
Right?
know,
It's
I've never had to
what
grow up.
100%, man, 100%. Like,
Yeah, and
is there one specific memory that sticks out?
oh man, there's some crazy ones. I mean, one's back from when I was touring with my own band, um, doing the USO tours. We got to go to Egypt, and uh, we smoked a bunch of hash on the front porch of this gas station, and then got to climb one of the Great Pyramids.
Mm.
and watch the sunset.
Right on, man.
Like
Yeah.
who gets to,
Who
this is
gets to do
crazy.
that?
Not that I advocate for smoking a bunch of hash and climbing ancient ruins, but
Yeah.
That was a crazy memory that definitely sticks out. Getting to see the Roman Colosseum, walking around that in the middle of the night when the streets were pretty empty. That was nutty. Going to the 38th parallel in Korea, the North and South Korea
Yeah.
border right there. I don't know. You've got some crazy ones too. You're living it right now. The
No.
sphere.
Yeah, this is cool. I had one that I was going to tell you about. It just, man, my mind has been crazy. I just forget things sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
But I got to see Stonehenge. I got to go to the Godzilla Hotel in Tokyo, Japan. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
people will mock me for my love of Godzilla, but that was a big deal to me. And the only thing that made it suck was I didn't have my kid there with me. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
the dad and son nerds at the Godzilla Hotel.
Yeah.
But
And that's the biggest trade off with what we do, isn't it? It's time away from the wife and kids and
yeah,
friends and family. It's like, so I just try to be the best I can when I am with them,
yeah,
to that experience, be the best dad and husband I can be.
right on,
Because
man.
it is a goddamn balancing act, and
It's a hard life. Not, I mean, for the people at home, it's definitely harder. And the fact they deserve all the credit because they allow us to do this.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have friends, neighbors who are like, I don't know how you do it, and I'm like, see the house over there? That's how I do it. It's my job,
Right, right.
The
When you
real world
said
dictates we have bills to pay, and
when you
I put
said
all my
earlier,
eggs in one
like
basket, unfortunately, so I know this, but
when
it's
you said earlier, like I like tube amps, I like analog amps, and I'm like, but I also like to eat.
right,
So I gotta
right,
learn. I gotta learn this gear, you know.
yeah,
But
yeah,
well,
yeah.
Patrick, man, I appreciate your time. I know we tried this before. We had a few technical difficulties, but dude, I love you, man.
Love you
You're
too, buddy. It's an
you're a
honor.
good friend, man. And
Yeah.
like I said, you came to you popped into my life just when I needed a good friend, you know.
And hey, man, you saved me as well. You have no idea. And I've
Yeah.
never. I hope I. That.
Yeah.
That was a dark period during COVID.
Yeah. For everyone, man, but all I can speak for is how it affected me and the steps I try to take to better it. And I think, I always say the universe puts things in your way, and he definitely, the universe definitely put you in my path, and I thank it for that.
Well, you're a blessing, man. I was so bummed when you moved from up the street. I felt like I was 10 years old again, losing my
It was
buddy
so
up the
cool when
street.
you came to New Jersey and I got to see you. I got to come to your show and,
Yeah,
and see a really cool band that I had never really seen. They've been
yeah,
around for a while and they just blew me away.
yeah. They're super nice guys, and it's yeah, yeah. We're all really blessed, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, the name of the podcast is called Is Breakfast Included? I'm going to ask you again, if we were having breakfast, which we have had, what would you have?
Yeah. What would I have?
Yeah.
Well, since I'm a Southern boy now, I get biscuits and gravy almost most of the time. If I go out to breakfast, that's what I get. You know,
It's a good one.
I
It's a
don't know.
good one.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what they call it, the Southern combo here at my local breakfast place, and that's what I get. So yeah,
Right on, Patrick. Man, it was good talking to you. It was good seeing you, brother.
you have a good one. Love you, man. And it's I wish we got to chat more.
All right. Well, we could still call each other all the time.
Yeah, when this thing calms down in Vegas, give me a ring.
Will do, brother.
You take care. Thanks for having me.
Right on. Pat Ryan. Told you he was a cool guy. Didn't I tell you? And you always doubt me. I know you always doubt me when I say, oh, he's a cool guy. You're like, man, not everybody can be that cool, but they are. Everyone is cool in their own way. Anyway, you can find more about Patrick on his Instagram at PatVRyan9721. I mean, go check it out. He posts a lot of family photos, a lot of gig photos, or don't, man. Don't go over there and just be talking a bunch of nonsense, all right? But while you're online, check out isbreakfast.com. Check out our YouTube, our Instagram, subscribe to our podcast, like, comment, and share videos of our podcast, all that good stuff. Make sure you buy a shirt too. I know we just had Valentine's Day. I think it was last week. So maybe you can give your significant other a late Valentine's Day gift of an IBI t-shirt. That would be really cool. I would like one. If somebody came with me and gave me a shirt like that, I'd be like, fuck, dude. Anyway, I'm done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.